Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. This is Swathi Kalyani, Research Analyst at the Takshashila Institution, and today I have with me my colleague Rajesh, and we're going to talk about the recent incident that happened where SEBI kind of stopped Wall Street's most sophisticated trading firms called Jane Street from accessing India's security market and kind of accusing the US firm of widespread market manipulation, and also ordered to deposit around $564 million in alleged unlawful gains into an escrow account. So, hi Rajesh.
Hello.
So the incident was SEBI's case hinged on claims that Jane Street intentionally distorted the less liquid cash market to profit more on the more liquid options market, essentially using sophisticated algorithms. And it also identified some 15 specific days between January 2023 and March 2025, primarily on options expiry days, where Jane Street allegedly repeated variations in these manipulated patterns. And what makes this case particularly fascinating is how it exposes the intricate mechanics of this options market itself. SEBI's own study found that retail investors lost about $20 billion on option trades over the 3 years. And it's raising questions about, whether sophisticated players have created an unlevel playing field. And Jane Street has now resumed operations after depositing the required amount. And it's being allowed back into the Indian markets. But the fundamental questions this case raises about market structure, fairness, and the boundaries between, algorithm-based trading and manipulation remains unresolved. So we'll try to discuss on that and probably get some useful insights about it. And to start with, can you explain what are options and future markets in simple terms, if possible?
Okay, I'll try to explain it in simple terms, but let's see. Okay, so there are three types of markets, right? One is your normal cash market where, let's say you want to buy a stock or sell a stock. And let's say a stock is worth 100 rupees. You pay 100 rupees and you get the stock. So that's immediately settled. It's called the spot market. And then there are derivatives broadly, right? Derivative meaning it is based on an underlying asset, but it's not the actual asset. So I'm not actually buying or trading the stock. I am buying and trading based on the price of the stock, some other contracts. There are two types of those contracts. One is called a futures contract and one is called an options contract. Now, what is a futures contract? In a futures contract, what happens is, let's say you and I there's an index, let's say Nifty. Okay, let's say the Nifty is at 10,000 today. And you and I decide that in a month's time, we want to bet on where the Nifty will be, right? So I think Nifty will be 10,100 and you think it will not reach 10,100. So we will enter into a futures contract, right? And the contract is that I will agree with you that in a month's time, I will buy it at 10,100, right? So then if it's more than 10,100, I will make a profit. If it's less than 10,100, you will make the profit. So that's a futures contract, okay? So there is an obligation that we will settle that bet at a later date. An option is that I want the opportunity to buy something, but I don't have the obligation. So it's like a lottery ticket. I think that Nifty is at 10,000, it will become 10,100 and I buy a call option, okay? Now, if I'm buying, somebody must be selling, okay? You are on the opposite side, let's say, and you're selling the call option. That means you have, based on your understanding of markets, decided that, Rajesh he wants to buy an option for Nifty at, say, 10,100. And I am going to sell him that option because I don't think Nifty will be 10,100. Right? So what are you gaining? You are gaining something called a premium, because what you are saying to me is, okay, I am willing to enter this bet with you, but actually there is no settlement, right? Because if it is not 10,100, you don't have to do anything from me. You don't have to enter into the obligation. So how do I gain something as the seller? What I gain is a premium. So I am like a lottery ticket seller and you're a lottery ticket buyer. For the most part, the lottery ticket seller will make money because there'll be thousands of people buying the lottery and only one person might win. In this, it's not exactly that same angle, but So most of the times what happens in options is you might buy a call option and it will not hit what it's called as the strike price. If it goes above the strike price, I have to pay you.
Yeah.
So I have a risk that I'll take premiums from a lot of people, but if I'm wrong, I'll pay out a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an options market and a futures market. I hope that is simple enough, right?
Yeah. Also, what makes India's options market so unique, or has there been a recent?
Yeah, so from about 2017, SEBI has tried to promote, made it a lot easier for people to trade in the futures and options markets in India.
Okay.
They reduced the size of the future. So there's something called a lot size. So when you make a bet on the futures or options market, right, you're not buying one Nifty index number. It'll be like minimum lot size of 100. So the actual bet is 50 lakhs or 10 lakhs or 5
Okay.
lakhs, right? It's not, you're not buying one share of Nifty. You're buying 50 shares or 100 shares. So when you reduce that, it's a process called sachetization. The SEBI chairman at the time called it sachetization of the financial markets.
Okay.
Just like in shampoos, you have sachets. You're trying to reduce the size so that more people can participate.
Yeah.
And after that, a lot of retail investors have actually started participating in the Indian futures and option markets. And maybe culturally also, it's possible that Indians do like to gamble. It is quite significant that India's options market is one of the largest in the world. It's very, very large. I mean, it's about, I think SEBI's own interim order had shown this number that it's about 300 times the cash market and 100 times the cash plus futures market. So it's a massively high market. And another interesting feature of India's options market is that retail investors are 40% of the market, which is very rare. In most places, it's institutional players who are on the options and futures market.
Yeah.
In India, retail investors are putting money into options.
And retail investors would include anybody.
All of us,
this,
anybody.
right?
If you have an account at Grow or Zerodha, you can buy options.
Okay.
Right? So nobody's asking you whether you have the money to back it up, how much is nobody's asking you questions around your net worth. Like for example, to buy bonds or to play in some places, you have to show you are a qualified investor. But here, anyone who has an account can
I
do
think I also remember from our discussions that we have seen college students just sitting next to us in the bus and using these apps and trading.
Yeah, so that's it. That is what is unique about it. It's a very large market with a very high percentage of retail population that participates in it. And that also makes it, I guess, interesting for players like Jane Street, right? Because they are very sophisticated people. So that, I mean, first thing I will say is I don't think that just because a large institution has made money, it's necessarily all fraud.
Correct.
Right? Because there is, if our options market is 300 times the size of the cash market, it's one of the largest markets in the world, and let's say a lot of people are buying and selling options, somebody has to be on the other side of the trade. So somebody has to provide what's called liquidity. And for the most part, that's what a Jane Street is doing. One interesting thing about this thing is the total profits they made from it was about 36,000 crores over the 2 years. But SEBI has only identified about 4,000 crores as illegal. So it's not like they've said everything you've done is illegal. They're saying on particular days, we think these things are illegal. It's worth, we think about 4,500 crores worth of money is what's called disgorgement. It's
coming to that, what exactly did SEBI accuse Jane Street of doing? Explain.
So SEBI's accusation is that and these are on specific days, namely when the options are expiring, SEBI has said that you have deliberately, you've done two things. One is, on some days you have purchased the price of, say, the Bank Nifty, which is a very popular option and futures instrument. So you bought the actual underlying stocks that make up the Bank Nifty. So ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, if you just buy 2 or 3 banks, you can push up the price of the Bank Nifty index. So you bought the stocks. And that as a result of that, the price of the Nifty goes up. When the price of the Nifty goes up, the premium on the call option also goes up, right? Because the chance that it will hit that call price is higher. So if I'm going to sell it to you, I will ask for more premium because I'm at more risk. So one accusation is you have bounced up the price by buying these stocks, and then the call option premium goes up, and then you sell those call options in the market. So you make a lot of premium. And at the end of the day, when you sell the stock, obviously the option will expire worthless. So that's an accusation. The other accusation, which is I think the more interesting one, is you buy the bank stocks and push up the Nifty, and you buy a put option. The put option is a bet that the market will drop.
Okay.
Right? So you're taking an insurance against the market dropping. You want to benefit from that. So you buy Nifty stocks in the morning, you sell call options, you simultaneously buy put options. And at the end of the day, when you sell the stocks in a rush, the price will drop. So you might make losses on the stocks, but your put options will be worth a lot of money and you'll make money. And that's what SEBI has found in their interim order, that you were making about 7 times the money of like you lost stocks money on the stocks, but you're making a lot more money on your option side. So that is why they're saying this is a deliberate manipulation. And there are two things. One is the intraday price manipulation, which is the first thing I told you about, right? You buy the stock and you sell at a higher premium. The second is it's called extended marking to market, which is at the end of the day. So the on the day of an options expiry, the final price of that option is based on the last 30 minutes of the volume of the stocks.
Okay.
So if I sell in the last 1 hour, if I just dump all of my holdings and I am already buying say 4 to 5,000 crores worth of stocks, which is a lot in the Indian market because the stock market, the spot market, cash market is not very large, right? So if I just buy 4 to 5,000 crores of 2 or 3 bank stocks and I dump all of them at the end and that forces the price to drop very fast, then I'm effectively forcing my put options to be valuable. That is the accusation.
Okay.
And they are saying that on one specific day, in 2024, 17th Jan 2024 or Feb 2024, for that day they did the entire calculation. And they said we found similar patterns for another 15 days. So they are saying you've done this repeatedly, and so that is the basis of the interim order.
So how did this whole case came into light? I mean, how did like SEBI get interested?
So that's a very interesting story. The original story is that Jane Street is a US based high frequency trading firm,
Yeah.
and there was a court case going on in the US where one of their traders had been poached by another competing firm called Millennium Capital, and that trader went there and started replicating the same trade that Jane Street was doing in India. So there was a case in the US, and Jane Street was very particular to make sure that the word India was never used in the case. So their lawyer never used the term India. He just said that in a market, we have this proprietary trading system that's making us money, and this guy has copied our proprietary algorithm. He should not be allowed to trade. So Jane Street ensured that the term India never enters anywhere because they felt that if people even know in which market it's happening, we will lose our edge. But unfortunately, the Millennium Capital lawyer mentioned that it was India where the options trades were happening. And so, and then they settled eventually. So that's how SEBI came to know. It became news that, SEBI, Jane Street has been making a lot of money in the Indian options market by trading. So it became there's a huge amount of money. I think it's $3 or $4 billion, something like that in 2 years they've made in India. So obviously SEBI got interested to know what's happening, and then after that, there were a couple of other guys who would actually, I forgot the name of those gentlemen, but they were the ones who first surfaced this idea that, some of this is actually manipulation. They came up with very nice presentations. They spoke a lot about it. And then SEBI also got interested, followed up, did their research, and then they have come up with this interim order.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what's Jane Street's side of the story? How are they justifying these actions?
Well, so far, officially, we don't know what Jane Street is saying. Internally, reports suggest that they've told their employees that this is very inflammatory and what we are doing is basic index arbitrage. But I was reading...
Index arbitrage?
So index arbitrage means that the job of somebody who does arbitrage is to make sure that there is not a lot of price difference of the same asset in two different markets. So as an example, if there's so in India we have NSE and BSE, two exchanges where a stock is traded. And now suppose consistently you find a stock that is selling say 5 rupees higher in NSE and 5 rupees lower in BSE, an arbitrager will buy it on BSE and sell it on NSE in the same day. And he'll do it at a large volume. So eventually that price will equalize. So that's what arbitrage does, right? You make sure that these kind of silly price differences should not exist in an efficient market. So that's what arbitrage is. So the same thing happens in the futures and spot market. Now, let's say that the price of the Bank Nifty on a given morning is X, right? And the options pricing is not market pricing, right? There are formulas based on which you can find what is the... So you can back calculate from an options price or the premium being asked for, say, what is the index that this price reflects. Now, Jane Street says that they found on the morning, and this is some peculiarity related to do with India's options, expiry volumes and stuff like that.
Okay.
So they found that on the option expiry morning, the option price suggested was more expensive than the stock.
Okay.
The implied price of the Bank Nifty from the options pricing was more than the Bank Nifty price. So they said, we are doing arbitrage. So I buy the Bank Nifty and I sell the option.
Correct.
And when I do that, the premium should come down. Now, the funny thing is, there was an interesting article in Bloomberg. I forgot the name of the author. He's very nice. Matt Levine. He's a very nice financial. So he's actually written about this. And he says, and he actually showed a Bloomberg chart that shows that, one of SEBI's interim order on that date, 17 Feb 2024 or Jan. So they showed the price of the premiums when the 23-minute window from the start of market for 23 minutes. They've shown detailed information about premiums and all of that stuff, right? So Matt Levine has this chart that shows that at that time, actually, the implied price of the option and the stock price actually converges.
Okay.
And you can actually see it in the SEBI's data also.
Okay.
That the premium is actually dropping. So now that is arbitrage. I am buying the stock and selling the option. So the premium and so I'm bringing supply into the options market.
Yeah.
Which means the price will drop.
Okay.
So Jane Street's point is, look, premiums are dropping.
Okay.
And that's my job. I'm bringing premium, right?
Yeah.
The second point they're making is, in order to sell an option, I am not taking up, it's not a positional call. I don't know what will happen.
What will happen.
Yeah, I don't care what happens to the Nifty. I'm doing arbitrage,
Yeah.
right? So I don't have any particular feeling for the Bank Nifty that I will hold it for the long term. So because I want to sell an option, I sell the option, I buy the put, and that is equivalent to buying a future.
Okay.
Let's say mathematically it's equivalent to buying future. Now their point is, if this is arbitrage, when that option settles, I must sell the stock. Why will I hold it?
Yeah.
So they're saying, of course we sold the stock, because that is the opposite side of the thing. When that option settles, I sold it. When I sold it, my options happened to make money.
Okay.
But the fly in the ointment is, your puts were 7 times it needed to be if it were purely arbitrage.
Oh.
Now, this is a question that even Matt Levine has not addressed in his article, and that's what SEBI says, that look, you are net short 7 times what you need to be. If it's only arbitrage, you don't need to be that net short.
But it's a large firm also.
It's a large firm also. So that is their point. That what we are doing is arbitrage. It's not market manipulation. That's the same point that Levine is making, that how can you say with confidence that this is market manipulation and not arbitrage?
Yeah,
right?
What will be the difference between, legitimate arbitrage and...
It's a tricky thing. I mean, that's why, so that's why this process is far from over. It does an interim order. SEBI has said this has happened.
Yeah.
Now Jane Street will have the opportunity, now that they've put the money in escrow that SEBI has asked for, Jane Street will have the opportunity to come back and present their evidence. And then there has to be a reasoned answer. So it's very tricky to say what is arbitrage and what is not arbitrage.
Okay, so what laws and regulations did Jane Street allegedly violate according to SEBI or according to its own regulations and mandates which are there?
So I think what's violated is something called the Prohibition of Fraudulent and Unfair Trade Practices Regulation under SEBI Act.
Okay.
So some section 11(1)(4), stuff like that. Those are the sections under which SEBI is empowered to act against it. So essentially that is to say that you have done what your trading practices are, what is termed as manipulative, right? So in the sense that you have deliberately manipulated one index to make money on a corresponding market. So something like, typically it's called a pump and dump scheme. So you would have seen it in, where, like, for example, there have been cases in India where somebody's pumped up the price of a stock by, coming up on YouTube or other places and having influencers talk up the stock, right? So what happens there is that the promoter will pay somebody and they will talk up the stock, and retail investors will run into it, and then the stock price goes up and you dump your shares. So this happens very commonly in crypto markets and stock markets. So something similar to that is what SEBI has said that these guys have violated. And like I was saying, there are two main subsects under which they've done it. One is that intraday price manipulation, which is related to buying the index to pump up the premium in the call. And the second is extended mark to market, which is you dumped your stocks at the end of the day to make sure that the expiry prices are below, your put options are more valuable and things like that. So those are the two broad things that they've done, according to SEBI.
So is it always seen that SEBI tries to protect the retail investors?
Not just SEBI. I think if you look at India, it is always the case that, our regulators are much more protective of retail investors, right? So even in 2007, so I remember, like, in India, for example, even today, short selling in India is very difficult to do. So those are based on 2011 shorting rules, which was somewhat relaxed in 2023.
Okay.
And in 2023, when Hindenburg happened, we again went back to 2007 shorting rules, right? So India it is, one might argue that this is a good, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. As a free market person, I think if you're a retail investor and you're investing in options without understanding it, then, I don't know how much protection you really need. But I see the point that you should protect. Maybe for the sake of the market, it is important to protect the smaller investors. So, there are both sides to that argument, right?
The reason that probably options market became such a big deal is because there are so many small investors, retail investors in India, and it looks like it's not just about Jane Street. It's more like there might be
a structural issue. If you're saying that your options market is 100 times cash plus futures or 300 times the cash
Correct.
market, that means that there is some structural incentive for people to make those kind of bets in the market, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And actually today you will see it a lot. There are a lot of influencers on YouTube who will give you options trading strategies, and and those come with the terrain. It's a bit of a gray area, right? I mean, they are not talking about the risks, they are talking about guaranteed money and fast money to make
And
money.
is
and all
there
of that.
things like when you start in the options market, like for example, I'm a college student or something and I have that pocket money which I can put it, like initially do I make a profit, which like how gambling really gets into the addiction part, right?
I mean, I don't think that, I mean, a lot of people do say that that's how it happens for people, that you
Okay.
tend to make money on the options market because, so for example, if your market is in a bull run, right, and there's a lot of liquidity, like post-COVID, everybody pushed money to the market, markets started to go up. At that point of time, it's fairly simple for people to make money on call options because the market is going up,
Okay.
right? You buy a call option and the chances are the market will end close to your end, or you will sell it at a premium, back at a premium, or your call option will hit and you'll make some money on it. That is likely to happen. The problem with these kind of markets is when it whiplashes, you lose a lot of money, right?
Right. Yeah.
So because high risk and then high reward, because it's leverage, right? So if I buy an option, it's like 25 times the notional price. It's a huge leverage. So the thing about leverage is when it's working, you'll make a lot of money, and when it doesn't work, you'll lose a ton of money.
Kind of reminds me of the money I lost in crypto.
Correct.
But
So, yeah. And in fact,
So-
one could argue that, see, like I was saying in our earlier conversation, that risk never actually disappears. It only
Yeah.
transforms.
Yeah.
So when you try to cut down risk in one place, so people who are gambling on that place will go and gamble elsewhere, right? They will try to find that risk elsewhere. You're not, the people who want to take risk will take risk.
Yeah.
Like I remember long ago reading this book on the mindset of traders,
Okay.
or the mindset of gamblers. And that person makes this very interesting point that a gambler is arrested by the cops. They shut down some in the US, and they shut down this gambling den and they arrested the person. And as they put him into the police car, this guy sees that it's raining and there are 2 raindrops running down the window, and he makes a bet with the cop saying this raindrop will reach the bottom first or that one. He's saying that's the mindset of the gambler. He wants to gamble.
I think also ours though, there is enough history of gambling, right? All our scriptures have a little bit
Correct,
of,
yeah.
I mean,
So-
it's there in our culture.
True, it's possible that that's also there. Plus, I mean, like, so that's one structural aspect of it. The fact that our options market are so much larger that even a Jane Street will come in and say, oh, the Indian
It's
market is
attractive
large
to
enough
them.
that in dollar terms I can make a lot of money
Yeah.
here. So they are here. It's not only a bad thing. They are here to provide liquidity also.
Correct.
But obviously they are here to make money. They are here to make profits. So they will try to make profits whenever there are inefficiencies, according to them at least.
Yeah. And
So that always exists. The second, I think, structural and interesting problem is, so in this particular case, right? So one of the things that I read in the SEBI order, which I found interesting, is that Jane Street only had to buy ICICI stock and HDFC stock for the Nifty to go up. Why?
domestically
because
important.
those two
Yeah,
are the largest banks in India, and they are big chunks of the index.
Correct.
Why are those two the largest banks in India? Because RBI has traditionally been very conservative about bank licenses.
Yeah.
So between ICICI and HDFC and the next bank license, which is I think Kotak, I could be wrong, but I think it's Kotak.
Okay.
There's a huge gap. So you gave them such a huge runway that now they are so massive, and in banks network effects work, so they are so large. Now, why was RBI very conservative? Even today, they're very conservative.
Yeah,
Right?
they
You
are.
don't get easy licenses. If you're a corporate, a Reliance or a Tata can't start a bank because they are industrial houses and so on and so forth. The reason is to protect the small investor, the depositor, bank depositor. So that's why you're conservative. But in some sense, that conservation has led to this problem that these two banks are such a huge part of the Nifty. And as a result, the bank Nifty has become more manipulable by an outside player, right? So the risk didn't go away. You protected the depositor. Many of those depositors took their money, put it in options market, and they lost the money there. So just, what have you really done, right? So this is another problem, I think, structurally, that our cash market is so shallow that these things are possible. In a larger, more deeper cash market, maybe this would not be that easy. But anyway,
yeah, I think the
These are-
protective thing makes sense because if I'm not wrong, SBI, PNB, ICICI and HDFC are the DIBs, domestically important
Right.
banks. And now
Yeah.
LIC also has the domestically important insurer, all
Correct.
those tags.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched upon the cash market thing. So what should the regulators actually do, How do we create a balance between all of these different kinds of market and probably...
no, I mean, look, see, if the market is structurally that way, I don't think functionally you can do. Should you try to stop Indians from, is 40% too high a number? I don't know. Maybe in this larger population, as income grows, this is what's going to happen. Who knows? I mean, I have no sense of how that works out. The cash market being shallow, I also think that's sort of path dependence. Some of our, if you look at the largest stocks in our market, right, they all have very low float, like an Adani or a Reliance. They don't have a lot of their stocks floating in the market.
Okay.
Because they became large companies in a different way. They started as family-owned businesses, and they never really had to go and raise money from venture capitalists and so on. The next generation of companies that are coming, the Zomatos, the Swiggies, which are listed, those are venture capital funded firms, right? So at some point, those guys will try to exit. Their shares will come into the market. So the next generation of firms will be more liquid.
Okay.
So there will be more opportunities in the cash market. Hopefully, over time, the cash market sizes will go up. There'll be more liquidity, there'll be more money. And then some of these imbalances might go away. Otherwise, I don't know. I don't think you should try to ban. If you try to ban them from the options market, the retail, which SEBI has actually done that. They tried to increase the lot sizes, made it more difficult for them to trade. You have to pay the margin and premium upfront. So they've done some things to reduce activity, which has reduced after the Jane Street activity order came out. Activity dropped by some 20-25%. So some of it has happened. But again, it will come back. Like people will wait and watch for a bit. Then again, they'll start getting influenced by other influencers and they'll go back to the market. They're not going to stop it.
Okay.
So I don't think you should either. I mean, I think the only thing that the regulator can honestly do, which I think would be a good thing, is similar to the whole mutual funds Sahi campaign, which has been running for decades now, I think, which has slowly brought people into something like that, where an educational thing where you actually talk about the risks of the options market and educate people. Over time, hopefully people will understand that, this is not as simple as it looks and you need to be more careful. That I think is the most logical thing for the regulator to be doing.
Okay.
And the other thing, of course, a flip side to this is now they passed the interim order. It's a 105-page document, very detailed. Hopefully, Jane Street has paid the escrow money. They'll come back and there'll be some conversation. I hope that the final order, whatever it is, whether they allow them back or ban them or whatever, is equally detailed so that, it is important for external operators to see that, okay, the Indian markets are, that the regulator is reasoned with what they're doing. Because that's also important. You don't want a situation where nobody is coming on the other side and there's no liquidity in our options market, right? Because the larger your economy grows, your financial markets also need to be sophisticated.
Right. So how do you think SEBI's decision, like the positive or negative, however the document looks out, how will these, international trading firms or the FPIs, will it affect how they operate in India? Will it change or?
Depends on how stringent the orders are. No? I mean, if your orders are so stringent that from the interim order, what you can tell is, for example, that Jane Street had 4 different firms operating in India, 4 different PAN cards, right? 2 of them were doing the cash market operations of buying the stocks. The options work was being done by 2 other subsidiaries out of Singapore and elsewhere. And the profits were showing up in that and the losses were showing up in. Now, why did they have to do all of this manipulation or not manipulation, this kind of structure? Because foreign portfolio investors are directly disallowed from doing intraday trading in stocks.
Okay.
Right now, you've come up with this structure. Because of that, they did it this way. And maybe because of that, that's why the NSE missed it. Because it was 4 different PAN cards. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Yeah.
So this is another thing, right? So similarly, after this, if you do something to stop an FPI from doing something in the futures market, if it's too stringent, the liquidity might go down. Then hopefully it doesn't mean much, but who knows? You don't know what the consequences are, and you don't want that to happen.
So much play in the market.
Yeah, you also don't want the opposite. You don't want Jane Street to have paid this 4,000 crores and they come and have a conversation with SEBI and SEBI just says, yeah, it's all fine, which they've taken the money and they've said you can come back and trade with some restrictions. Now, after a month, if SEBI says, yeah, we've looked at their evidence and we think it's all fine, then people will be like, okay, but in your interim order, you had 105 pages saying all of this. Now, you're not told us anything.
Okay.
So that also should not happen. Either way, it should be transparent. They should come out with a detailed information. This is what we think. And hopefully, if Jane Street does provide enough evidence, SEBI will go back and say, yeah, you know what, this is index arbitrage. This is not manipulation, right? That also should happen because that's good. That shows the sign of maturity. Should not be the case. If you look at popular media, there's a lot of angst about how the retail investor has been fleeced by the large player and all of that. Yeah. That should not impact the regulator, which I don't think it will. I mean, the interim order is nice and detailed.
And just to ask, what are SEBI's powers with respect to regulation and taking up this case and all that?
So they can obviously take up any of these cases that happen within the Indian market. Like I said, Section 11, multiple subsections under section, give them the chance to operate. Typically, what happens is that SEBI will either do something called disgorgement, where they will say they will identify this 4,500 crores or whatever it is. That's called a disgorgement. They've said that this is what we think is the profit you made from your manipulation. So that we will take back from you.
Okay.
That's one. Or they can ban people from the market for a certain point of time, which they've done in India, Ketan Parekh and 3-4 other cases where they've insider trading and stuff like that. They'll say you can't access the stock market for a certain point of time. So those are the two things that SEBI does.
So basically makes the rules, changes the rules if it's required according to everything is there.
Yeah.
Cool. That was quite insightful. And just to end up, like, what other market integrity issues do you think we should be, concerned about, or there should be more awareness, and how we look at stocks and everything?
I mean, see, broadly, look, any financial market there's always going to be some amount of manipulation in the market, because all markets are about information asymmetry. Right? If you and I know the exact same thing about a stock, we cannot be on the opposite side of a trade on that stock, right? It's not possible. We know the exact same things and still you think it's a sell and I think it's a buy. So that means by definition, there is an asymmetry in a trade. One of the two of us has to lose. So that means incentives are always there for somebody to hide information.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental argument in a market. And therefore, in a market, this always means that retail investors are going to be at a disadvantage to institutional investors who are running high frequency algorithms, and they are data mining, and they are taking satellite maps information to look at parking lots to figure out if Walmart is going to have more sales. There are companies that do that in the US, right?
Okay.
They use geospatial maps to look at the parking lots to see if in China the numbers are as per things. And there's a lot of things there. But a retail investor will at best read an annual report. Even 90% of retail don't do that. So that information asymmetry is there. So as a regulator, and in fact, even exchanges, right? In this case, one of the things that surprised me is that this whole case happened in the US. Then SEBI got interested. Then they told the NSE to go and analyze the trades. So like fundamentally, you should ask, if you are the NSE or the BSE and you are the marketplace where the trades are happening, are you responsible only for the execution and the operation of it? Or should you also be looking at patterns on a daily basis to see if something is suspicious and then flag it saying maybe it should be analyzed?
Get more analysts.
Yes. I mean, today with AI and supercomputers and so much of compute available, there's no reason not to do this kind of analysis. So,
I know, I've talked to my peers who tell that, when they're interested in just buying shares or whatever, they just put the question on ChatGPT and ask it to give a reply on, what's the best things to do. So
those are things. I mean, look, it's kind of tough to figure out what kind of manipulation will happen in the market, because when you shut one down, a new one will come up. Like there will always be people who can dream up new ways of manipulating markets. That will never end. So you have to educate people that manipulation can happen, and regulators have to be aware. They don't need to throw the baby and the bathwater out, but you have to be aware that in markets manipulation happens, and they have to be careful about how they regulate it. That's it. So
quite interesting discussion, Rajesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.